Hey guys, and welcome back to Born in the Past. Tonight, we are not going to a distant, ancient past of stone and myth. We are traveling to a time that is still within living memory for some, a time of iron, mud, and machines. We journey to the Western Front during the Great War. Together, we will try to understand the unimaginable. We will step into the boots of a young soldier, leaving a world of color and sound for the gray, silent horror of the trenches. We will feel the chill of the morning mist, hear the distant rumble of artillery, and descend into the muddy embrace of a world where survival was measured in minutes. So before the whistle blows, take a moment to like the video and subscribe if you value these journeys into history. And tell me in the comments, which historical event do you think would be the hardest to live through? All right, let's take a deep breath of clean air while we still can. The year is 1916, and the train is pulling into the station. The train journey ends not at a station, but at a place where the station used to be. What's left is a skeleton of twisted metal and shattered stone. This is the first sign, the first hint that the world you knew, the world of ordered streets, solid buildings, and predictable days, has ceased to exist. You step down from the railway car, your new uniform feeling stiff and unfamiliar, your rifle heavy and awkward in your hands. You are one of hundreds, a river of young men in khaki and brown, flowing from the relative safety of the rear towards the front. The air here tastes different. It's sharp, metallic, with a faint, acrid undertone that catches in the back of your throat. An officer with a weary face and empty eyes shouts an order. You begin to march. The road is not a road anymore. It is a river of mud, churned by the endless traffic of boots, wagon wheels, and artillery. The landscape around you is a nightmare. The trees are splintered, skeletal arms reaching for a sky that is permanently gray. The fields are not fields, but a pockmarked wasteland of overlapping shell craters, many filled with stagnant, foul-smelling water. At first, the sound is just a low, continuous rumble, like distant thunder on a summer evening. You tell yourself it is thunder, but you know it isn't. As you get closer, the sound begins to separate. You can hear the deep, resonant boom of the heavy artillery, your guns, and you can hear the sharp, violent crack of the enemy's shells, landing somewhere ahead. You look at the faces of the veterans marching back from the front line. They do not look at you. Their eyes are fixed on something 1,000 yards away, or 1,000 years ago. Their faces are masks of mud, stubble, and an exhaustion so profound it seems to have carved itself into their very bones. They carry the smell of the place you are going to. The sun begins to set, but there is no beauty in it. The light is weak, filtered through a haze of smoke and dust. The distant horizon flashes with brief, silent strobes of orange and white. It looks like heat lightning, but it is the flash of cannons. You are close now. The air grows thick with the smell of wet earth, rotting sandbags, and something else, something sweet and deeply unsettling. The sound is no longer just a rumble. It is a physical force that you can feel in your chest. A signpost, riddled with shrapnel holes, points the way. It reads, simply, "To the line." You don't enter the trench. You descend into it. It is a wound carved into the earth, long, narrow, zigzagging ditch that seems to swallow the light. You step off the relatively solid ground and onto a series of slippery wooden planks laid over a sea of thick, sucking mud. These are the duckboards. Your guide, a corporal with a face as gray as the landscape, tells you not to step off them, ever. He points to the flooded bottom of the trench, where you see the swollen body of a rat floating next to something you refuse to identify. The smell hits you like a physical blow. It is an overwhelming symphony of decay. The stench of stagnant water, of unwashed bodies, of human waste from the overflowing latrines, of rotting sandbags, and beneath it all, the faint, sweet dryness of death, sickly odor of death. You try to breathe through your mouth, but the taste is even worse. You move forward, stooping low. The walls of the trench are shored up with sandbags, corrugated iron, and wooden beams. They are wet to the touch, crawling with slugs and insects. The floor is a river of mud, a thick, greedy porridge that clings to your boots and tries to pull you down. You see men huddled in small alcoves carved into the earth, their faces illuminated by the brief, nervous flare of a match lighting a cigarette. They watch you pass with dull, indifferent eyes. You are just another replacement, another body to fill a gap. The trench is not a straight line. It is a maze of turns, junctions, and dead ends, designed to stop an explosive blast from traveling too far. There are communication trenches leading back to the rear, and saps that creep forward into no man's land. The corporal points to a low opening covered by a gas blanket. "Your dugout," he says, his voice flat. You look inside. It is not a room. It is a hole. A small, dark cavern dug into the side of the earth, barely tall enough to sit up in. It is damp, smells of mold, and is probably already home to a family of rats. This will be your home, your shelter from the shells, the rain, and the horrors you cannot yet imagine. You drop your pack onto the dirt floor. The distant rhythmic thump of artillery is the new silence. The stench is the new air. The mud is the new ground. You have arrived. Welcome to the front. The first rule of the trench is that there is no silence, ever. You learn to sleep through it, work through it, exist within it. It becomes the new air. There is the constant, dull concussion of the big guns miles away, a sound that is so persistent you only notice it when it occasionally stops, leaving a terrifying, unnatural quiet that makes everyone look up. That is the sound you can live with. The sounds you never get used to are the close ones, the sharp cracking sound of a sniper's rifle, followed by the wet, soft thump of a man falling onto the duckboards. You learn not to look. You just press yourself tighter against the muddy wall. There's the high-pitched whistle of an incoming shell, a sound that grows from a faint scream to a deafening roar in the space of a few heartbeats. It is a sound that commands you, forces you to the ground, praying it is not meant for you. And then there are the human sounds. A muffled cry from a dugout further down the line. A man softly weeping in his sleep. The endless, hacking coughs that echo through the damp air. A sickness born from the mud and the cold that everyone seems to share. You remember the faces of the veterans you saw on the march in, their empty eyes. You begin to understand. They were not just tired. They were deafened, not by the noise, but by the meaning behind it. Every sound here is a story of something ending, and you just pray it isn't yours. The trench is a living thing, and it is constantly trying to die. The mud walls, soaked by endless rain, slump and collapse. The wooden supports rot and splinter. The duckboards, those precious planks you were warned not to step off of, sink into the grasping mud. Your first real chore is not heroic. You are not cleaning your rifle for a great battle. You are given a shovel and told to dig. You spend hours scooping thick, heavy, stinking mud from the bottom of the trench and piling it back onto the parapet. It is a pointless, Sisyphean task. For every shovelful you remove, another seems to slide back down. It's an irony that doesn't escape you. Your first duty as a soldier for the Empire is to fight a war against mud. And the mud is winning. When you are not digging, you are given other tasks. Repairing the barbed wire entanglements at night, crawling on your belly in the dark, the metallic taste of fear in your mouth, fumbling with wire cutters while you imagine a sniper's scope trained on your back, refilling sandbags. An endless cycle of scooping sandy soil into burlap sacks, which will be soaked through and rotting within a week, only to be replaced by new sandbags you will fill yourself. And then there is the constant task of trying to maintain some illusion of order. You clean your rifle meticulously, oiling the bolt and wiping down the stock, knowing it will be caked in mud again within the hour. It is a ritual of denial, a small act of defiance that says you have not yet completely surrendered to the filth. The trench demands constant work. It is a hungry, decaying beast that must be fed with your sweat and your labor every single day, just to stop it from swallowing you whole. There is a time of day more feared than any other. It is not midnight, when the darkness feels absolute. It is the dawn, that beautiful, poetic moment when the first gray light of the sun spills over the horizon. In the world you left behind, dawn was a symbol of hope, of a new beginning. Here, it is a signal for death. It is called the stand-to. An hour before sunrise and an hour after sunset, every man stands. You are jolted awake from whatever shallow, fitful sleep you manage to get. You stumble to your position on the fire step, a narrow ledge carved into the trench wall. You stand shoulder to shoulder with the other men of your platoon, rifles in hand, bayonets fixed, staring out over the parapet into the growing light. This is when most attacks happen. The faint light provides just enough visibility for an attacking force, but enough shadow to provide cover. So you stand, and you wait. The cold of the morning is a different kind of cold. It is sharp, raw, and it cuts through your damp uniform. Your hands are numb around the stock of your rifle. You can see the nervous tremor in the hands of the man next to you. No one speaks. The silence is thick with tension. Every shadow in no man's land becomes a German soldier. Every skeletal tree looks like a sniper's post. You remember the sweet, unsettling smell you noticed on your way in, and you understand now it is the smell of old death, stirred by the morning mist. Your heart pounds a slow, heavy rhythm against your ribs. This is the moment where your entire existence shrinks down to a few hundred yards of shattered earth. You are not thinking of home. You are not thinking of glory. You are thinking only of seeing the sun climb fully into the sky. Because if you can survive the dawn, you might just survive the day. The stand-to ends. The sun is a weak, watery disk in the sky. A quiet order is given to stand down. A collective sigh of relief ripples down the trench line. You have survived another dawn. But the relief is short-lived. A man on watch, a veteran with a keen nose for trouble, lifts his head and sniffs the air. His face changes. It is not a look of fear. It is a look of sharp, sudden alertness. "Wind's changed," he mutters. Then you smell it too. It is not the usual stench of mud and decay. It is something new. A faint, sweetish chemical smell. Like pineapple and pepper. It is an unnatural scent in this world of rot. Before you can even process the thought, a frantic, clanging sound erupts from a watch post further down the line. A man is beating a suspended shell casing with a metal rod. The gas alarm. Panic, cold and electric, flashes through you. All training, all discipline, dissolves into a single, primal instinct. Breathe. Or rather, don't breathe. You fumble for the satchel at your side that holds your gas mask. Your fingers are clumsy, numb with cold and fear. You pull out the primitive hood, a canvas bag with a single celluloid eyepiece and a rubber tube. It feels flimsy, pathetic, a child's toy against a chemical storm. You hear men cursing, their voices tight with panic. You hold your breath until your lungs burn. You pull the hood over your head, tying the strings at the back, your hands shaking. The world transforms. Everything is seen through a grimy, fogged-up lens. The familiar trench becomes a distorted, alien landscape. The sounds of the world are gone, replaced by the deafening, ragged sound of your own breathing, amplified and echoing inside the mask. In, out, in. It is the sound of you desperately trying to stay alive. The rubber of the mouthpiece feels strange and suffocating. A device designed to save your life that makes you feel like you are already drowning. Slowly, you raise your head over the parapet. It is here. It is not a cloud. It is a wave. A low-lying yellowish-green mist that clings to the ground, rolling towards you with an unnatural, silent purpose. It is strangely beautiful and utterly terrifying. It seeps into every shell crater. It pours into the dips and hollows of no man's land like a ghostly river. You remember the wind, your constant companion on the wall. Now, it has become a traitor, carrying this poison directly to you. You hear a terrible, wet coughing sound from further down the line. Someone who wasn't fast enough. Someone whose mask failed. You see a figure stumble and sink to his knees, his hands clawing at his throat. You quickly look away. You cannot help him. To help him would be to join him. The green cloud reaches your trench. It spills over the parapet like a slow-motion waterfall, sinking to the bottom. The rats you despise, the ones that own this muddy floor, are the first to die. You just stand there, trapped in your own head, listening to your own desperate breaths, waiting for the cloud to pass, waiting to see if the flimsy piece of canvas you are wearing is enough to keep the world at bay. The green cloud slowly thins, carried away by the same traitorous wind that brought it. An order is shouted. Masks off. You pull the hot, suffocating hood from your head and take a deep, shuddering breath of what you hope is clean air. It still stings, but it is air. The immediate danger has passed, but you feel no relief, only a cold, hollow dread. That's when it begins. It begins without warning. There is no bugle call, no shouted command to announce it. It starts with a sound unlike any other, a sound you have learned to identify with pure finality. It is not a single boom. It is a high-pitched, tearing shriek, like the sky itself is being ripped apart like canvas. A veteran next to you, a man who has not spoken a word since the gas alarm, simply says, "Incoming," and the world ends. The first shell hits 100 yards away. A geyser of black earth and smoke erupts from the ground. Before you can even process it, another one hits closer. And another. The tearing shriek is constant now, and the ground begins to shake. Not a tremor, but a violent, bucking motion, as if you are standing on the back of a dying beast. You do as you were trained. You flatten yourself against the wall of the trench, making yourself as small as possible. Your helmet feels as thin as paper. Your rifle, that tool of supposed power, is useless. You are not a soldier anymore. You are an insect, cowering in a ditch, waiting for a giant, invisible foot to crush you. The noise is absolute. It is a physical force that batters your body. A wall of sound so loud that you can feel it in your teeth, in your bones. It is the roar of 1,000 waterfalls, the crash of 1,000 thunderstorms, all happening inside your head. You cannot think. You can only feel. A shell lands on the parapet directly in front of you. The world dissolves into a blinding flash of white light and a deafening concussion that lifts you off your feet. Dirt, stones, and hot metal shrapnel rain down on you. You curl into a ball, your arms over your head, convinced you are dead. But you are not. The ringing in your ears is the only thing you can hear. The air is thick with the smell of cordite and churned earth. That same sweet smell from before, only now it is suffocating. The bombardment does not care about you. It is not personal. It is industrial. A storm of steel, sent from miles away by men you will never see, to kill men you will never know. And you are simply in the way. Someone is yelling, pushing you. The dugout! Get to the dugout! You scramble on all fours, crawling over the shattered duckboards, your mind a blank slate of pure terror. You remember the hole in the wall the corporal showed you, your home. It now seems like the only sane destination in a world gone mad. You dive through the gas blanket into the darkness within. It is a tomb. The air is thick, stale, and smells of wet earth and fear. Other men are already here, pressed tightly together, their bodies a single trembling mass. You can hear their ragged, shallow breathing. You can feel the warmth of their bodies, a strange and unwelcome intimacy in the midst of chaos. The sounds from outside are different in here. They are muffled, deeper. You do not hear the shriek of the shells anymore. You feel them. Every explosion is a dull, heavy thump that resonates through the ground, vibrating up your spine. The earth itself seems to be groaning in agony. With every nearby impact, dirt and small pebbles sift down from the ceiling, showering your head and shoulders. A young boy next to you, a recruit who can't be more than 16, is reciting a prayer in a low, shaking whisper. Another man is silently crying, tears carving clean paths through the grime on his face. This is the great irony of the dugout. It is your only shelter, and it is your greatest fear. To be out in the trench is to risk being torn apart by shrapnel. To be in here is to risk being buried alive. One direct hit on this small cavern, and the tons of wet earth above you will become your grave. There would be no digging you out. You would simply vanish. Time ceases to exist. There is only the darkness, the trembling earth, and the waiting. Every thump makes you flinch. You find yourself thinking not of home, not of your family, but of the sheer weight of the mud above your head. You are no longer on the surface of the world. You are already in its gut, hoping it does not decide to close. And then it stops. The silence that follows is more deafening than the barrage itself. It is a dead, hollow quiet, broken only by the intense ringing in your ears. For a long moment, no one in the dugout moves. No one speaks. You are all listening, waiting to see if the silence is real, or just a pause before the next onslaught. A minute passes, then 2. Slowly, men begin to stir. The spell is broken. You crawl out from the dugout, back into the gray light. The trench is unrecognizable. It looks as if a giant, angry god has clawed at the landscape. Sections of the wall have collapsed, filling the passage with mountains of mud. The duckboards are gone, splintered into kindling. A crater, still smoking, has opened up where the latrine trench used to be. There is an ironic thought that at least that problem has been temporarily solved. Men move like ghosts through the wreckage. Some are dazed, their faces blank with shock. Others are already at work, their movements frantic, digging at a collapsed section of the trench wall where you can hear a low, rhythmic groaning. You see a helmet, one of your company's, lying half buried in the mud, a dark stain spreading on the earth around it. You do not look closer. You do not want to know whose it was. Further down, 2 soldiers are trying to help a third, pressing a dirty field dressing against his side while he stares at the sky with wide, unseeing eyes. You are told to look for survivors, to assess the damage. You are handed a shovel again. Remember the shovel from yesterday? The one you used to fight the slow, patient war against the mud. It feels different in your hands now. You are not just digging mud. You are digging for the living, and, you suspect, for the dead. The NCO begins to shout orders, his voice cracking with urgency. Clear this passage. Reinforce that wall. Find Jones and Miller. The routine begins again, an absurd attempt to impose order on absolute chaos. The battle is over, for now. But the war against the trench, against the mud, and against your own fraying nerves has only just begun. They live in the same trench as you, but they do not live in the same world. The officers, they are a different species. They walk on the duckboards with a sense of ownership, not of desperation. Their uniforms, while still stained with mud, are of a finer cut. They speak with accents that you associate with universities and quiet. Wood-paneled libraries. You see your platoon's lieutenant, a boy of 19 with a thin mustache he is desperately trying to grow. He is younger than you, and you know for a fact he has never been in a real fight before. Yet he holds the power of life and death over you. He inspects your rifle with clean hands. He gives orders from a map that he keeps folded in a waterproof pouch, a map of a world you cannot see. There is a vast, invisible wall between you and them. It is a wall of class, of education, of experience. You resent them. You resent their clean collars, their better rations, their private dugouts that are deeper and drier than yours. You see them as tourists in your hell, playing at being soldiers. But you also depend on them. You need their orders to give you purpose. You need their confidence, however false, to keep your own fear at bay. You need them to be the ones to make the impossible decisions, so you don't have to. It is a strange and complicated relationship. One day, you see the young lieutenant stumble and fall in the mud, just like any other man. For a split second, he looks panicked, lost, just a boy. Another soldier helps him up, and in that moment, the invisible wall between them flickers. But then he straightens his uniform. His face hardens back into a mask of authority, and the wall is rebuilt, stronger than ever. They are the gods of this small, muddy world. And you are just a mortal trying not to displease them. In the quiet moments between the shelling and the digging, there is life. It is a fragile, flickering thing, found in the small, shared rituals that keep you from going mad. You huddle in the relative safety of the dugout, the air thick with the smoke of cheap, hand-rolled cigarettes. A man from Liverpool, whose face you only ever see illuminated by matchlight, offers you one. You take it, though you don't smoke. You take it for the gesture, for the brief, warm glow of the shared flame. This is where you learn who you are fighting alongside. You learn that the boy who recites prayers during bombardments was a tailor's apprentice. He shows you a worn photograph of his sweetheart, a girl with a shy smile who is waiting for him in a world that no longer seems real. You learn that the cynical veteran who complains about everything sends most of his pay back home to a mother he insists he can't stand. There is a strange, dark humor here. You joke about the quality of the food, calling the hard biscuits iron rations because you suspect they could actually stop a bullet. You complain about the officers, safe in no deep command bunkers, planning your decks on pristine maps. You laugh at things that are not funny, because laughter is a shield. It is a way of proving to the all-consuming misery that it has not yet won. Someone pulls out a worn pack of playing cards. A game starts. No money is exchanged. Money is useless here. You play for cigarettes, for a piece of chocolate from a parcel, for the simple victory of winning something, anything, in a place where you are constantly losing. You share letters from home. You read them aloud in a low voice, translating the news of births, weddings, and village gossip into the shared language of the dugout. These stories are like ghosts from another life. They remind you that there is a world beyond this mud, A world where men are not defined by the rifle they carry or the fear in their eyes. This is your brotherhood. It is not a brotherhood of glory or heroic speeches. It is a quiet, desperate bond forged in shared terror and mundane suffering. You may not know these men's dreams, but you know the sound of their breathing in the dark. You know who snores, who weeps, and who prays. And in the trenches, that is more than enough. There comes a moment when you are called to the periscope. It is a simple device, a tube with mirrors that allows you to see over the top of the trench without getting your head blown off. You press your eye to the cold metal eyepiece, and you see it for the first time. No Man's Land. The name is a perfect, horrible truth. It belongs to no one. It is not land. It is a wound on the face of the earth. A landscape from a nightmare, stretching for a few hundred yards between your trench and theirs. The ground is a churned, gray-brown sea of mud and overlapping shell craters. There is not a single blade of grass, not a living thing. The skeletal remains of trees stand like grotesque scarecrows, their branches clawing at the sky. Tangled forests of barbed wire snake across the terrain, rust-colored and vicious, waiting to catch the living and hold the dead. And there are bodies. You do not see them clearly. They are just motionless forms, lumps of sodden khaki caught on the wire, or half submerged in the water at the bottom of a crater. They have been there for weeks, months perhaps. You see no faces. You see only the tragic, final stillness of men who, just like you, received an order to advance. They have become part of the landscape. Their decay is the source of that sweet, sickly smell that never leaves you. There is an almost sacred silence about the place. The wind whistles through the wire, creating a low, mournful hum. A crow might land on a shattered tree stump, a single spot of living black in a world of dead gray. This tiny stretch of earth is the most expensive, most contested piece of real estate on the planet, and it is a completely dead world. You watch as a flare goes up from the enemy trench, casting a brief, merciless white light over the scene. The landscape is lit up like a photograph from hell. Then it is dark again. You pull back from the periscope, your heart cold. You have now seen the place where you are expected to go. The place where you will almost certainly die. You understand that the trench is not a fortress designed to protect you. It is just the edge of the grave. The order comes not as a shout, but as a series of quiet, grim whispers passed down the line. Fix bayonets. The words are simple, but they change everything. The low chatter in the trench dies. The card games stop. Men who were just moments ago sharing a joke now stare at nothing, their faces suddenly pale and taut. You pull the long, cruel knife of the bayonet from its scabbard. It makes a soft, metallic shing sound that is somehow louder than any artillery shell. You lock it onto the muzzle of your rifle. The weapon in your hands is transformed. It is no longer a tool for distant fighting. It is now a spear, a primitive instrument for close, desperate work. The sergeants move down the line, their voices low and steady. They carry a rum jar. This is the fabled trench courage. They pour a small amount into each man's cup. The liquid is harsh and burns your throat, but it sends a fleeting, false warmth through your body. It does not make you brave. It just dulls the edges of your terror. You perform the last rites of the living. You smoke a final cigarette, your hands trembling so much you can barely hold the match steady. You check your ammunition pouches, your fingers fumbling with the clips. You reread a line from a letter, clutching a piece of a world you are about to leave. You whisper a prayer to a God you are not sure is listening anymore. You look at the faces of the men around you. The boy who was a tailor's apprentice is gripping a small cross. The cynical veteran is cleaning his fingernails with the tip of his bayonet, his expression completely blank. Each man is alone in his own private universe of fear. Then comes the whistle. It is a thin, shrill, utterly alien sound in the deep bass rumble of the war. It is the sound of the shepherd calling his flock to the slaughter. For a heartbeat, no one moves. Your body refuses to obey. Your feet feel nailed to the duckboards. Stepping up onto the fire step, over the parapet, and into the open is a violation of every instinct for survival you possess. But then the man next to you moves, and the man next to him. The NCO yells an oath, his voice cracking, and you move too. You place your hands on the wet sandbags of the parapet. You take one last deep breath of the foul, familiar air of the trench. And you go. You climb onto the fire step, a platform of wood and earth. You take a moment, your head just below the level of the parapet. You are about to step into no man's land, the dead world you saw through the periscope. It feels like stepping off the edge of the earth. The officer's whistle shrieks again, sharp and impatient. In you go. You heave yourself up and over the sandbags, your hobnailed boots finding no purchase in the slick, gritty mud. You immediately stumble, catching yourself before you fall. And then you run. It is not a heroic charge. It is a clumsy, desperate scramble. You run hunched over, trying to make yourself small. A useless gesture against what is coming. The air instantly fills with a sound you have only heard in the distance until now. A sound like a giant tearing a giant sheet of canvas. It is the sound of a machine gun. It does not feel like you are being shot at by men. It feels like you are running into a storm of invisible, red-hot hail. You hear the sharp hiss of bullets passing your ear. You see the mud in front of you erupt in small, angry puffs as the rounds chew up the ground. The man running to your left, the cynical veteran who is cleaning his bayonet. He is there one moment and gone the next. He doesn't scream. He doesn't cry out. He simply vanishes, collapsing into a heap of sodden khaki, becoming another lump in the tormented landscape. You do not stop. You do not look back. You cannot. Your world shrinks to the few feet of shattered earth in front of you. You are focused only on the next shell crater, the next piece of cover. You leap over a tangle of barbed wire, the barbs tearing at your trousers. You fall into a crater, the impact knocking the wind from your lungs. For a second, you lie there, your face pressed into the cold, chemical-smelling mud, your heart hammering against your ribs. All around you is the symphony of an industrial hell. The roar of explosions, the relentless chatter of the machine guns, and the thin, terrified shouts of men. You force yourself up. The enemy trench is still 100 yards away. It looks like an impossible distance, an eternity. You start running again. Somehow, you make it, you and a handful of others. You tumble into the enemy trench, landing in a heap of mud and confusion. The place is a mirror image of your own hell. The same sandbags, the same splintered duckboards, the same smell of fear and filth. But it is unfamiliar. A maze where every turn could be a trap. And there are faces. This is the most shocking thing of all. The enemy is not a faceless monster. He is a boy, no older than you, with wide, terrified blue eyes. He is fumbling with his rifle, his hands shaking just as much as yours. There is no time for thought, no time for hatred. There is only a primal animal instinct to survive. All the training, all the drills with wooden posts, it all vanishes. This is not a science. It is a clumsy, panicked brawl. You see a bayonet lunge from the shadows. You parry it with your own rifle, the clash of steel ringing in your ears. A man next to you swings his shovel like a club, and you hear a dull, sickening thud. You fire your rifle from the hip, the explosion deafening in the narrow confines of the trench. The recoil slams the butt of the rifle into your shoulder. You are pushed back into a corner. Another soldier comes at you, his face a mask of desperation. You have no time to reload. You swing your rifle like a bat. You feel it connect. He stumbles back, his face a canvas of pure shock, and then he is gone, disappearing around a corner. You are breathing in huge, ragged gasps. The air is thick with gun smoke. Someone is shouting in German. You don't understand the words, but you understand the panic. You realize, in a moment of chilling clarity, that they are just as scared as you are. They are not the disciplined, monstrous enemy from the posters. They are boys, trapped in the same muddy ditch, praying to the same silent God. The chaos lasts for an eternity that is probably only a few minutes. You have lost all sense of direction, all sense of who is winning. You are just fighting to keep a few feet of space around yourself, fighting to take the next breath. The whistle shrieks again. This time it is your officer's signal. It is not the signal for victory. It is the signal for retreat. The attack has failed. The word is passed in frantic shouts. Back! Get back! To turn your back on the enemy, to expose yourself to their fire, feels like suicide. But to stay here is certain death. You scramble out of the enemy trench, leaving the chaos and the shouting behind you. And you are back in no man's land. There went End Omo. A journey back is a different kind of hell. It is slower, more agonizing. You are no longer fueled by adrenaline. You are fueled only by a desperate, pathetic need to get back to the relative safety of your own trench. The machine guns start up again, hunting you as you run. You zigzag. You dive into craters. You crawl on your belly through the mud, dragging your heavy rifle behind you. You do not look back, but you hear the sounds. You hear a man calling a name, over and over, the name of a friend who is not getting up. You see hands reaching up from a shell crater as you pass, and then you see them go still. You hear the low, pleading cries for a medic, cries that are slowly swallowed by the sounds of the guns. You pass the motionless forms you saw earlier, the ones caught on the wire. You realize with a cold horror that you now recognize one of them. He was in your platoon. You had shared a cigarette with him just this morning. You keep moving. You have to. To stop is to join them. You finally tumble back into your own trench, falling over the parapet and collapsing into the mud. You are shaking uncontrollably. You are covered in filth and sweat, but you are alive. You look around for the familiar faces of your squad. You look for the boy who is a tailor's apprentice. You look for the loudmouth storyteller from Liverpool. You do not see them. The attack is over. Nothing has been gained. The line has not moved, but everything has changed. The battle is not followed by silence. It is followed by noise of a different kind. It is the sound of men weeping, not loudly, but in quiet, choked sobs. It is the sound of medics, the stretcher bearers, calling out in the gloom as they search for the living among the fallen. And it is the low, continuous groaning of the wounded, a sound that will haunt your sleep for the rest of your life. You sit on the fire step, your body numb, your mind a hollow, ringing void. You stare at your hands, caked in mud and something you refuse to name. They don't feel like your own. The sergeant comes down the line. He holds a small mud-stained notebook. He is doing the tally. His voice is flat, devoid of all emotion. He calls a name. A man a few feet down from you answers with a weak, "Here." He calls another name. Silence. He calls it again, louder this time. Only the wind answers. The sergeant makes a small mark in his book and moves on. He does not pause. He cannot afford to. He calls the name of the boy who was a tailor's apprentice, the one who showed you the photograph. Silence. He calls the name of the loudmouth storyteller from Liverpool. Silence. Gap after gap. Name after name is met with nothing but the sigh of the wind and the groans of the wounded. You realize the platoon you charged with this morning has been gutted. Less than half of you have returned. You did not win. You did not lose. You simply were consumed, gutted. A feeling of profound unreality settles over you. You survived. You are one of the ones who made it back. But you do not feel lucky. You feel like a ghost, a leftover. You look at the empty spaces on the bench beside you, and you understand that your survival was not due to skill or courage or strength. It was just chance, a random, meaningless accident. The shell that landed next to you was a dud. The bullet that passed your ear hit the man behind you. You feel a strange, cold guilt. Why you? Why not them? There is no answer. There is only the sergeant making his quiet marks in his book, toning men you shared bread with this morning into numbers. The order, when it comes, feels like a mistake, a joke. Your platoon is being rotated out, sent a few miles back to a reserve trench for 3 days of rest. The journey to the rear is a journey back through time. With every step you take away from the front, the world slowly begins to reassemble itself. First, the shell craters become less frequent. Then, you see a tree, a real tree with leaves. You see a field that has not been churned into a sea of mud. The air loses its chemical sting, replaced by the simple, clean smell of wet grass. The sound changes too. The constant, grinding roar of the front fades into a distant rumble, and you begin to hear other things. The song of a bird, the creak of a wagon wheel, the sound of your own footsteps on a road that is not made of mud. You arrive at a small, half-ruined village, and it is the most beautiful place you have ever seen. There are houses with roofs. There are windows with glass in them. There are civilians, women and old men, who look at you with a mixture of pity and fear. You are given a bunk in a barn, filled with fresh, dry straw. It feels as luxurious as a king's bed. You are given a hot meal, a stew with real meat, and bread that is soft. You eat it slowly, savoring every bite, feeling a warmth spread through you that has nothing to do with the food. That night, you and the others go to an estaminet, a small, crowded tavern. You drink watery beer from a real glass. There is a piano playing in the corner, slightly out of tune. Men are laughing loudly, without fear. It is all so normal that it feels completely insane. But you cannot connect with it. You feel like a ghost, a visitor from another world. The laughter sounds too loud. The light feels too bright. You sit in a corner, watching these people live their lives, and you feel nothing but a vast, hollow distance. You realize with a cold certainty that you cannot go back. The trench has changed you. You carry it inside you. The 3 days pass in a blur, and soon the order comes to return to the line. Part of you is relieved. The simple, brutal logic of the trench is something you understand. This world of laughter and piano music is a language you have forgotten how to speak. After the terror comes the boredom, and in many ways, the boredom is worse. The days that follow the failed attack bleed into one another, forming a single, endless stretch of gray. There are no great battles. There are no charges. There is only the routine, the grinding, soul-crushing monotony of waiting. You wait for the next meal, which will be the same tasteless stew as yesterday. You wait for the next work detail, which will be the same pointless task of moving mud from one place to another. You wait for a letter from home that may never arrive. Mostly, you wait for the next bombardment or the next order to attack. Sleep offers no escape. You can never truly sleep in the trenches. You drift in a shallow, nervous state of semi-consciousness, startled awake by any sudden noise. You sleep in your clothes, your boots still on, your rifle by your side. You dream of shells falling, of tangled wire, of the faces of the men who did not come back. You often wake up more tired than when you lay down. The dampness is constant. It seeps into your uniform, into your blanket, into your bones. Nothing is ever truly dry. A low, persistent cough settles into your chest, a companion you share with everyone in the trench. You see men who have been here for months, and you see the change in their eyes. It is a dull, vacant stare. They move, they eat, they follow orders, but something inside them has been hollowed out. They call it shell shock. The doctors say it is a weakness of the nerves, but you know what it is. It is the soul trying to escape from a body that is trapped in hell. You try to keep your mind occupied. You play cards. You write letters you are not sure will ever be sent. You scratch carvings into the wooden stock of your rifle. Anything to fight off the slow, creeping madness of the waiting game. Because you learn that the enemy is not just across no man's land. The enemy is also time itself, stretching out before you with no end in sight. There is an enemy in this trench that is more patient than any sniper, and more relentless than any artillery barrage. It is the water. It is a permanent, shallow sea of cold, brown, stagnant liquid that you live in. Remember the corporal's warning on your first day? Don't step off the duckboards. An impossible order. The duckboards are broken or have sunk. The water is everywhere, and it is constantly trying to claim a piece of you. Once a day, if the sergeant is diligent, comes the foot inspection. It is a strange, almost humiliating ritual. You and the other men sit on the fire step, struggling to pull off boots that have become stiff with dried mud and wet leather. The laces are knotted and frozen. It is a battle in itself. Finally, your boot comes off with a wet, sucking sound, and you look down at your own foot. It does not look like your foot anymore. The skin is dead white, puffy, and deeply wrinkled, like you have been in a bath for a week. It is cold to the touch, and you can barely feel your own fingers against the flesh. There is no pain yet. There is only a strange, unsettling numbness, a feeling that this part of you is no longer truly yours. The sergeant moves down the line, glancing at each man's feet. He is not looking for dirt. He is looking for the telltale signs of decay. You have seen men sent to the rear with it. Men whose feet have turned blue or black. Men who will lose their toes or their entire foot. It is a type of blighty wound, but a slow, foul, and undignified one. You are handed a small tin of whale oil. It is a foul-smelling, greasy paste. This is your only defense. You are ordered to dry your feet as best you can with a spare rag, and then to rub the grease all over them, working it into the skin. The oil is meant to create a barrier against the constant damp. The sensation is disgusting, but you do it meticulously. It is the most important task of your day. More important than cleaning your rifle. More important than eating. Because your rifle can be replaced. Your feet cannot. After the inspection comes the worst part. You have to pull on a pair of damp, cold socks and then force your swollen foot back into the wet, muddy prison of your boot. You stand up, and you step back down into the water. The war against the Germans may have pauses, but the war against the water never, ever stops. You are not just fighting the Germans. You are fighting a multi-front war against an army of insects and rodents. And this is a war you can never win. First, there are the lice. They are everywhere. In the seams of your uniform, in your hair, in your bedding. They are a constant, maddening torment. You feel them crawling on your skin, 1,000 tiny movements that drive you to distraction. The itching is a torture that never stops, day or night. At night, you and the other men will sit by the weak candlelight of the dugout. with your shirts off. This is called chatting. You are not talking. You are hunting. You run the flame of the candle along the seams of your shirt, listening for the satisfying pop of a louse being incinerated. It is a brief moment of victory, but you know that for every one you kill, 100 more are waiting. There are the rats. They are not like the rats you knew back home. These are a different breed. They are enormous, some as large as cats, made fat and bold from feasting on the endless supply of food in no man's land. You remember that single swollen rat you saw when you first arrived. You now see it was not an anomaly. It was a scout for an invading army. They are fearless. They scurry through the trench at your feet. They steal food from your pack while you sleep. You wake up in the dark to the sound of them gnawing on a wooden beam just inches from your head. Or worse, to the feeling of one running across your face. The men have a grim relationship with them. You try to kill them with your bayonets or shovels, but they are too numerous, too fast. Some men give them names. Some make grim jokes that the rats eat better than they do. It is a deeply ironic and horrifying thought that the only creatures thriving in this desolate landscape are the ones that feed on the dead. The constant itch of the lice, the bold scavenging of the rats. It is more than just a discomfort. It is a constant reminder of your own loss of dignity. It is a sign that you have been reduced, that you are living in a state of filth that is no better than the vermin you share it with. There are two types of hunger in the trench. The first is the simple gnawing emptiness in your stomach, a constant companion. The second is the hunger for taste, the memory of real food, a longing so powerful it is almost a physical pain. Your diet is a rotation of 3 grim staples. There is the bully beef, a canned, corned beef that you eat cold, straight from the tin. It has a salty, metallic taste and a texture like wet sawdust. There are the biscuits. You remember calling them iron rations as a dark joke, a joke that has long since lost its humor. They are square, hard, and utterly without flavor. You cannot bite into them for fear of breaking a tooth. The only way to eat them is to smash them with the butt of your rifle and let the crumbs dissolve into your tea, creating a gritty, unappetizing sludge. And then there is the stew. Once a day, if you are lucky, a hot meal arrives from the field kitchens in the rear. It is carried up the communication trenches in large metal containers. By the time it reaches you, it is lukewarm. It is a watery broth with a few floating pieces of turnip and, on a good day, a stringy piece of unidentifiable meat. You become obsessed with food. You spend hours debating with the other men what you would eat if you could have anything in the world. A steak pie, a roasted chicken, a simple, fresh apple. The fantasies become elaborate, detailed, almost religious in their intensity. Parcels from home are celebrated like divine miracles. The arrival of a tin of condensed milk, a small fruitcake, or a bar of chocolate creates a fever of excitement in the dugout. These items are more valuable than money. They are bartered, shared, and savored in tiny portions. A single square of chocolate melted slowly on the tongue. A reminder that the world once contained sweetness. This is the irony of your existence. You are surrounded by death, by industrial-scale destruction that can vaporize a man in an instant, and yet your most profound, all-consuming desire is for a hot cup of tea and a piece of bread that doesn't taste like dust. The arrival of the mail is the most important event of the week. It is a thin thread connecting you to a world you are beginning to forget. When the mail runner makes his way down the trench, a hush falls. Men gather around him, their faces filled with a desperate, childlike hope. He calls out names. For those who receive a letter, there is a moment of pure, unadulterated joy. For those whose names are not called, there is a quiet, bitter disappointment that stings more than the cold. You are handed a thin, mud-stained envelope. It is from your mother. You find a quiet corner of the dugout to read it, seeking a moment of privacy in a world that has none. You open it carefully, your clumsy, dirty fingers fumbling with the paper. Her words paint a picture of a life that feels like it belongs to another man. She writes about the weather, about the price of eggs at the market, about a neighbor's son who has enlisted. It is a world of small, gentle concerns. A world where the greatest danger is a coming storm, not a coming shell. The letter brings both comfort and pain. It is a comfort to know that this world still exists, that there are still places where the sky is just the sky, and not a source of constant menace. But it is also a pain, a deep, profound ache of dislocation. Her world is so impossibly distant, so alien to your reality, that you can no longer truly connect with it. She asks you to keep your feet dry. You look down at your boots, permanently submerged in a thick, cold soup of mud and water, and a bitter, silent laugh escapes you. You read the letter 3 times. Then you fold it carefully and place it inside your tunic against your skin. It is a shield of paper and ink. It is a reminder of who you were, and it is a hope, however faint, of who you might be again. In the absence of real information, rumors thrive. They are born in the latrines, whispered in the dugouts, and passed down the trench line like a contagion. The soldiers call it the latrinogram. It is your only source of news, and it is always wrong. There is always a man who knows a man, who heard from an officer's Batman that something big is about to happen. Sometimes, the rumors are of hope. Peace talks have started in Geneva. The German Kaiser is dying. A new secret weapon is being deployed next week that will end the war by Christmas. For a few hours, a wave of desperate optimism will sweep through the trench. Men will smile. They will talk of home. They will believe it because they have to. The truth that nothing has changed is too heavy to carry. Other times, the rumors are a fear. The Germans are planning a massive gas attack. Your division is being sent to the Somme for a big push. The new recruits from the countryside are all sick with a fever that is spreading through the camp. These rumors are whispered in a lower register, accompanied by nervous glances and the shaking of heads. You learn to treat every rumor with a deep, weary cynicism, but you listen anyway. You listen because the rumors are a distraction from the crushing monotony. They are a story, something to talk about other than the food, the mud, and the rats. They create a false sense of forward movement in a world that is completely static. The irony is that you, a soldier on the front line of the greatest war in history, know absolutely nothing about the war itself. You do not know if your side is winning or losing. You do not know the grand strategy. Your entire world, your entire understanding of the war is this single 300-yard stretch of muddy ditch. So you listen to the whispers. You pretend to believe the stories of peace. You pretend to dismiss the stories of doom. Because the rumors, like everything else in the trench, are not about truth. They are about survival. They are another way to pass the time, until the next order comes. The terror of a bombardment is a roaring fire. It burns hot and fast, and then it is gone, leaving you shaken but alive. But there is another fear here. It is a quieter fear, a slow, cold, patient thing that lives with you every second of every day. It is the fear of chance. It is the fear of the random bullet from a sniper you will never see. The fear of the single stray shell that happens to have your name on it. The fear of a simple infection from a cut on your hand turning deadly in this world of filth. You learn to live with this fear, to carry it like a second heart that beats out of rhythm with your own. It changes you. You develop small, irrational rituals. You always put on your left boot first. You touch the same lucky charm in your pocket before standing watch. You never light 3 cigarettes with the same match because someone told you it was bad luck. These rituals mean nothing, but they are a fragile shield against the terrifying knowledge that your survival is completely out of your hands. And then there is the most twisted irony of all. You begin to fear survival itself. You see men with terrible wounds, men who will live but never be whole again, and a dark thought begins to whisper in the back of your mind. You start to hear about the Blighty wound, a clean shot through the arm or the leg, an injury serious enough to get you sent home, away from this hell, but not serious enough to kill you or cripple you for life. You find yourself almost hoping for it. You feel ashamed of the thought, disgusted with yourself for wishing for a wound. But the thought is there, a testament to how broken this world is. A world where a bullet in the shoulder seems like a winning lottery ticket. This is the fear that truly grinds you down. Not the fear of dying, but the fear of what you are becoming in order to live. It happens on a quiet morning. There has been no shelling for hours. The snipers are silent. Even the wind seems to be holding its breath. A strange, unnatural peace settles over the trench. Then you hear it. It is not the sound of a gun, or a shell, or a scream. It is music. Faintly, from across no man's land, comes the sound of a harmonica, a simple, sad, familiar tune. Men in your trench stop what they are doing. They look at each other, confused. You slowly raise your head over the parapet, and you see them. The Germans. They are not charging. They are not firing. They are just standing there. Some are sitting on the edge of their trench, smoking. They look as tired and as muddy as you do. One of them, the one playing the harmonica, catches your eye. He does not raise his rifle. He simply nods. A small, almost imperceptible gesture of acknowledgement. You find yourself nodding back. For this single, bizarre moment, the war has stopped. You are not enemies. You are just 2 groups of men trapped in the same muddy nightmare, separated by a few hundred yards of shattered earth. You see a German soldier hold up a tin of bully beef and shrug, as if to say, the food is terrible here, too. A man from your side holds up one of his own biscuits and makes a face. A few men on both sides chuckle quietly. There is no great Christmas miracle. No one runs out to shake hands or play football. The distance is too great. The fear is too deep. But the shooting has stopped. You are looking at the face of the man you are supposed to kill. The man who is supposed to kill you. And all you see is yourself. Another boy, far from home, who is cold and tired and just wants this to be over. A moment lasts for maybe half an hour. Then, an officer's whistle blows from their side. The men disappear back into their trench. A few minutes later, a single rifle shot cracks the air, aimed high, a signal that the truce is over. You sink back down into your own trench, your heart heavy. That moment of shared humanity makes everything that comes after it so much worse. Because now you know with absolute certainty that the real enemy is not the man in the trench opposite you. It is the war itself. You remember your first day here. You remember how every explosion made you jump. You remember the overwhelming horror of the smells, the sight of the rats, the grim reality of the trench. You thought to yourself, I will never get used to this. That is the most terrifying part. You do. The human mind has a strange and terrible ability to adapt. The constant rumble of artillery, which once felt like the end of the world, is now just a background noise. You can sleep through it. The sight of death, which once shook you to your core, becomes routine. A stretcher carrying a man with a gray, bloodless face passes you in a trench. You press yourself against the wall to let it pass, and then you continue your conversation about the weather. You eat your meal just yards away from a spot where a man died this morning. You have to do this. You have to build a callus over your soul. If you felt the full horror of every death, every wound, every explosion, you would go mad within a week. You stop feeling. You operate on instinct and orders. You become a part of the trench, a walking piece of the mud and the misery. Your face becomes as blank and weary as the faces of the veterans you saw on your first day. Remember them? You are them now. But sometimes, something breaks through. A moment of unexpected kindness, the sight of a single stubborn poppy growing on the side of the parapet, a letter from home that makes you remember what it felt like to be a boy. In those moments, the callus cracks, and all the horror you have been holding back rushes in. It is a pain so overwhelming that it steals your breath. You quickly push it back down. You rebuild the wall inside your mind, because you have learned the most brutal lesson of this war: to survive. You must die a little each day. You must kill the part of you that feels, so that the part of you that breathes can continue. The past is a foreign country, and you are in exile. Sometimes a memory will ambush you. The taste of the stale, chlorinated water from your canteen might, for a split second, remind you of the clean, pulled water from the well behind your childhood home. The way the smoke from a cigarette curls in the air might remind you of your father's pipe. These memories are sharp, beautiful, and agonizingly painful. They are windows into a life you no longer lead, a person you no longer are. The boy who laughed with his friends, who walked through green fields, who slept in a warm bed. He is a stranger to you now. You can remember him, but you cannot feel what he felt. The future is a blank wall. You cannot imagine it. The other men talk about what they will do after the war. They talk about opening a shop, getting married, having children. You listen, but you cannot participate. To think about the future feels like a betrayal of the men who have no future. It feels like tempting fate. Your entire world has been reduced to the present moment. Your horizon is the next meal, the next watch, the next shell. To think beyond that is a luxury you cannot afford. It requires a type of hope that the trench has systematically destroyed. You remember your mother's letter, the one that spoke of small, gentle things. It feels like it was written 100 years ago to a different person. The connection to that world is stretched thin, almost to the breaking point. You live in the trench. The trench lives in you. It is your past, your present, and as far as you can see, your only future. You no longer dream of home. To dream of home is to remember what you have lost, and you have lost everything, except the patch of muddy ground you are currently standing on. And so the days turn into weeks, and the weeks turn into a season of mud and gray. You exist in a cycle, a nightmare that repeats itself with grinding, predictable regularity. The cold dawn arrives. You stand to, your heart in your throat, as you stare into the mist. The stand down is called. You eat your gritty porridge. You are handed a shovel, and you fight your daily war against the mud. You remember the faces of the new recruits who arrived with you, their eyes wide with a fear they tried to hide. You look at them now, or at the ones who are still here. Their eyes are different. They have the same hollow 1,000-yard stare as the veterans you saw on your first day. Bombardment comes. You press yourself into the ground, praying to gods you no longer believe in. The shelling stops. You dig out the survivors. You tally the dead. You repair the wall. A letter arrives. You read about a world of sunshine and harvests that no longer feels real. A rumor spreads down the line, the promise of peace, of an end. You allow yourself a flicker of hope, and then you crush it, because hope is a dangerous thing here. Then the order comes again. Fix bayonets. The rum ration burns your throat. The whistle shrieks. You go over the top. You see men fall. You fight in a panicked, clumsy brawl. You retreat, dragging the wounded with you. You sit, numb, in the dugout, while the sergeant calls the names of the men who are no longer there. And the next morning, the cold dawn arrives. You stand too. You are handed a shovel. The faces change, but the cycle never does. You are trapped on a wheel, a great grinding wheel of horror, and it turns and turns and turns. You are on watch again. It is night. The sky for once is clear. A sea of cold distant stars glitters above no man's land. They are impossibly beautiful and completely indifferent. They shine on you, on the mud, on the tangled wire, and on the motionless forms of the dead with the same serene, silent light. You are no longer the boy who got off the train. He is a ghost, a memory. You have been remade by the trench. Your innocence has been scoured away, replaced by a weary cynicism and a bone-deep exhaustion that sleep can never cure. You no longer think about victory. The word is meaningless. What would victory even look like? A parade? A medal? It seems like a child's fantasy. You no longer think about glory. You know now that there is no glory here. There is only survival, and the quiet, grim duty of helping the man next to you survive as well. You don't even think about home very much anymore. To think of it is to feel a pain so sharp, it is like a bayonet to the heart. So what do you long for? It is something much simpler. You long for an end. You do not care how it comes. A peace treaty signed by kings in a distant palace. A wound clean enough to send you back to a hospital. Or a final, silent darkness that ends the fear for good. At this point, the line between peace and oblivion has become blurry. You just want the noise to stop. You want the mud to dry. You want to lie down in a place where the earth does not tremble. You look up at the cold, silent stars. You do not pray. You do not hope. You simply endure. You are a soldier of the Great War. You are trapped in a nightmare, and your only dream is to one day wake up.